Bulldogs.
Yep.
Brandy, what's your read, first of all? Just a general statement of what you've heard, what you're reading, coming out of the Bulldogs, that they're training hard, and there's reportedly a group who have circulated that it's too hard. I mean, what do you do in that situation?
Well, I was a little surprised that I guess because of the amount of media that it's been getting, I was surprised that Cameron Ciraldo had come out and hold a press conference and try and explain himself. And some of the questions from the journos, who I can understand, that they just want a story, so they don't care what sort of question they ask. But I could almost hear it in Cameron Ciraldo's voice, wanting to say, "Are you serious? You really think that's, look, again?" And he said that through his press conference. He said, "Well, this is the NRL, and it's a tough game, and you don't become a player that can handle the NRL unless you experience toughness right throughout the week, unless you push yourself, unless it's, and you're trying to get these players mentally fit to last for 80 minutes. Mentally fit means physically fit. Mentally, your head gives up, your body, your body's got to be able to carry you when your mind's telling you that it's over, it's too hard.
Yep.
And they need to do this over and over and over and over again until they are that's second nature to them, Vossy. And when you talk about fitness, like in terms of physical fitness, a lot of it is mental fitness. Your mind needs to be able to push your body through the barrier. That physically fitness, I think players, unless it's obvious that a player is carrying a little bit too much condition, but it's you having the mindset to be able to push yourself past that physical limit that your body's going to take you on. And that's the game. It's a tough game, and you train hard. You push yourself at training to become that player, that player that can last 80 minutes, that his brain doesn't go freeze or fade out of it because he just can't handle it. When you talk about players or teams playing for the 80 minutes, it's because they're mentally tough. They can push themselves through that barrier.
Let's hear from the Bulldogs coach. First of all, Cameron Ciraldo on the discipline at the Bulldogs. He's in the firing line, and as you said, he's probably thinking, "Are you serious?" This is Cameron Ciraldo on discipline at the Dogs.
At different times, we've wanted to go really put some standards in place, and obviously, if you're late, we have to do something about that. But won't be talking specifically about it. We're trying to drive standards. We want to have winning performance standards, and a lot of that's around individual responsibilities, and we have to hold those standards. At different times, I think every group goes through times when your standards are challenged, and ours have been challenged at certain times, and we're trying to create winning standards here. Well, we've gone through a range of different ways of talking about holding standards. Some of that's been monetary related, some of it's been spinning a wheel, and then some of it's been trying to find ways to change behaviours. The reality is we need to change behaviours here, and I think we've done a good job of that throughout the season, and we'll continue to find ways where we can change behaviours to winning behaviours.
So that last grab is an inference or referencing what has been the report about the player late for training, and we don't know how many times the player's been late for training. But anyway, it's a crime of the team kind. Okay, so you've broken the rules, and your punishment, we're told, was this wrestling session. Suddenly you've got to go in there and you've got to put in these extras. Now, is that out of the question? I say no, but Brandy, you're the former player, having to do things like that as punishment. It's a different sort of workplace. Is there anything wrong with that?
It is, Vossy. It's a different work. Yeah, it's a different environment that you work in. Whether you have to wrestle or have to run, or whether you have to, whatever it is, whatever punishment that is dealt out. Normally the whole team suffer because of it. Like if there's someone to be penalised, normally it's the whole team is penalised because you one in all in.
Yeah.
And that's normally the situation. And as I said, it's not unusual, but these are the days of wrestling. No wrestling in my day, and I wouldn't have liked it either, the wrestle bit. But that's tough. You can have running penalties or different sorts of physical challenges that you have to perform if you're being
fines
punished.
don't cut it, do they? There'd be a limit. Fines aren't going to just work. When you're a team that hasn't played finals football for 7 years, and if you have players late for training, then fines aren't going to get the message
monetary
across. That's
fines
not what you're going to do.
No, because you want to make an example of what happens.
Yeah. So to old and young in your club, you might have a bloke in his 30s and you might have a 17-year-old that they witness this. Now, let's bring another voice into the story. A club great, a man who won a Clive Churchill medal, won a premiership, played for his state, played for his country, Willie Mason, who can be outspoken, but on his Levels Network podcast, speaking on the culture at the Bulldogs.
People within the Bulldogs or certain players inside the Bulldogs are not happy with the training schedule at the moment. Is that a soft excuse?
Fucking soft as shit. I hope to God. I mean, like, I hate shit like that because I see what our coaches and that put together, like with Ciraldo to Travis Tuma to Zap to Chatty Randall, Bobcat, Ogre, all these sort of guys, high performance. You know, like I know what the schedule is. And if you can't deal with it, you're not going to be there, right? Because there's high standards at the club, regardless of what's happening right now with this, where we're coming on the ladder or anything like that. But there's no excuses, and you'll get weeded out of the club because that's what Ciro wants to do. Like, these guys have had a losing mentality there for like 5 years. So it's a cultural thing, right? The winning and losing. So
this is a way of fishing them out,
This is a way to fish them out,
you
right?
Train hard,
If getting out there, if you can't handle it the way the Bulldogs play and train,
perfect.
This is not your club, all right? So, like, this is a perfect way, and they'll find out.
Yeah.
You know, you'll find out, because if you're on contract right now, right, and you don't happen to be there on the roster next year, or if they don't want you, you're that dude that they don't want at the club.
Yeah.
So the guys that we want there, they'll be there. You know, like players that were coming in, they're going to bring a winning culture as well. It's going to take a minute, right? But it's just the way it is. You got to tough it out. You know, like, it's just the way it is, and we're all in this together.
There we go, Willie Mason. I thought I was watching Strays there again. A flashback to the movie Strays there from Monday night.
But Willie is right. Yeah, he's right, because Cameron Ciraldo has arrived at the club. The Bulldogs haven't been going well for the last few years. He's got to work out which players, and he finds a lot of it out at training, which players are ready that want to be part of the club and have the ability and the mental toughness to have that winning culture. It's not always in games that sorts players out.
Yeah. Look, I know we'll need to take a break, but I still love this story about training. I can't get my head around at Melbourne, which is legendary. The pre-season training at Melbourne. Other teams may train as hard, but no one trains harder. There was the famous story, and I think George Rose might have been on this particular event. But they finished training one morning, an early morning session at Gosh's paddock there in Melbourne, and the head conditioner came over and said, "Oh, boys, we're just going to go for a walk. No, leave your phones in the rooms. Just grab your little backpack, drink bottle." They started walking from the heart of Melbourne. That might have been 9:30 in the morning. 10 o'clock that night, they're still walking. They're walking to the Dandenongs. They're still walking. They'd walked all day. They get there, and apparently there's some famous stairs. Maybe someone listening, and that was the last thing they did for the day. And then once they got to the top of those stairs, there was a little campsite. That's where they were, to put their head down. Yep. The alarm goes off. Then they're all woken up, so they don't hit the pillow until midnight. The alarm goes off at 4:30 in the morning, and they get up and they start walking again, and they walk back into town, not all the way back to the city, back to close to where they've camped. And they wash cars for the morning. Yeah, like that's not your regular job, is it?
No.
But you say they're going for a walk. 12 hours later, they are still walking, and they're walking into the Dandenongs, and that is part of Melbourne. No one gets left behind. You've got to keep going. You're tight as hell. But
some of those army camps, army camps that they take the players away on, they'll go and spend 3 days out in the bush somewhere. They
you're trying to break them, aren't you?
They're not fun. Yeah, no. That's right. They're not fun. They do a lot of things that you...
What you said earlier, you can't just do that in your off-season training. It has to be every week. Like, if your standards, if you're down the bottom of the table, then it has to be tough every week. You can pick weeks where you lighten up your training, but still the ethos has to be there throughout the entire season. So
doesn't matter what you do. Doesn't matter what you do it to your best. And you get in the habit of doing everything to your best and not cutting corners, and that's what builds or helps build that winning culture. MC, what you say about that?
Yes, good morning, fellas. It is an interesting one. It has spiraled in the last couple of days around Josh Addo-Carr. I checked it a couple of days ago, and I was told nothing to see here for the moment. So, as it stands, Josh Addo-Carr will be at the Bulldogs next year.
So, hang on a second. Was that a direct nothing to see here, pause, at the moment? Is that where we go?
That was me at the moment. I was just adding.
No, you've had it the at the moment bit. Yeah, okay. There's nothing to see here.
There's nothing there.
You know.
There's nothing going on there. But that's not to say that some clubs haven't reached out, because obviously he's a marquee player who's been down on form. But the Bulldogs would be loath to let him go. He's a crowd favourite. He's a bit of a glue of that side. So they've got no interest in parting ways with Josh Addo-Carr.
What else have you got on the Bulldogs then, apart from Josh Addo-Carr?
Well, where do we start trying to unpack this now, Brandy? Obviously, I was at Cameron Ciraldo's press conference yesterday, and he was pretty defiant. He was pretty steadfast. He basically drew a line in the sand and challenged his players publicly. If you're not happy, if you're not willing to do what I ask of you, which he believes is the minimum requirement to be an NRL player, please leave, and please leave now. That's essentially what he said. He knows. The Dogs understand it's been reported of 8 players have some concerns that they think it's more, 1, 2 or 3 players that are causing this angst in and around the club. Ciraldo's adamant that no one's approached him to voice some concerns. There was an element in today's paper where Ray Talamarina apparently spoke with Ciraldo about some concerns that he had, and he's been on the outs over the last couple of months. So, look, there's a little bit more to play out here, but what we do know is that the Dogs are in the midst of a clean-out, and they're willing to let anyone go who they believe or who don't want to buy into what Ciraldo's trying to achieve at the club.
For those not aware, Raymond Fatala-Mariner is the club captain. He was appointed as club captain at the start of the year, as opposed to on-field captain Reid Marnie, Matt Burton, the co-captains. Can you just clear up one thing for me? The wrestling story escalated from the player who was late for training had to wrestle 12 players. It escalated yesterday. It had to wrestle every single player in the squad. Like he had 30 wrestles back to back. Was there for about an hour wrestling.
Yeah,
where's the truth there?
So it was whoever. So it was at the end of a training session, and it was every squad member that was fit. So, there's roughly how many blokes at training, Brand, anywhere between 30, 35 blokes at training at a time. How many of those were fit? That could be 20-something that trained, and that player was forced to, asked to wrestle those players, each one of those players. So I'm going to say around 20 plus, anywhere between 10 to 30 seconds each. So, it's definitely more than 8, but I don't know if it's 30. I don't know exactly how many players were there, but it was the whole squad that was fit at that time had to wrestle that player.
You know what? I don't know. Am I twisted? I like the sound of that. I like that being introduced into your culture. Okay, late for training. I don't care whether you're the star player or the 17-year-old. This is what we're going to come up with. You reckon that person be late to training again? Would anyone want to be late to training? I think thunderbolts at teams not going well is the strategy. Again, that's just me, but Brandy, you can't just, what we said in the first hour and people just tuning in now, you can't just keep going on with fine system, and it can't be a joke. It's got to be punishment, and work hard.
I honestly don't know why we're talking about this. I really don't know why it's such a big thing that a team's bringing in some tough rules on players that step outside the guideline of what is considered, right and wrong at the club. But I don't even know why we're talking. And that's what I didn't know. Cameron Ciraldo had to come out and apologise for what he's done, and he didn't apologise. He just said, "Well,
he didn't apologise. No.
This is well. He had to explain himself."
Yeah,
Michael. He had to explain himself. I think there's no need to do that.
I think the only reason there's a need, Brandy, is because that player has taken offence to it, right? Rightly or wrongly, they've reacted adversely to that. Whether you can argue, yes, well, you're not cut out for the NRL or not, that's obviously a separate argument. And there were some players that were uncomfortable in the situation, right? There's no doubt. There was no doubt that some players thought it was potentially cruel by the end of it. So it did make some players uncomfortable.
Yeah, but if you're then got, well, I don't know. I'm too old fashioned. I'm old school. Like what happens inside a club stays inside a club. But I guess if this one player has gone outside and sought some advice from the RLPA, then it becomes a story. Anyway, and it becomes a story as well, because there's no doubt, and the Bulldogs aren't naive. There are unhappy players there, right? And that stems from not being picked or being told they're not wanted, and that happens at every club. There's no doubt about that. At some stage, that's right.
The players that aren't playing week in, week out fall out of favour with the club, fall out of favour with the coach, and but there's an element of discontent there amongst some players, a minimal amount of players, but and that's what's brought it to the surface. And to Cameron Ciraldo's credit, he's standing his ground, he's standing firm. And, it's gone on far too long at the Bulldogs. You look at their sustained lack of success. There's a reason for that. And there's something fundamentally wrong with that playing group. And that's what Cameron Ciraldo is trying to eradicate.